Okay, so this is an interview with my dad, David.
Hello, everyone.
Today's his birthday. You're turning
67.
67 today. So I thought, given that my research essay is on media and information and how it's dispersed and how that's changing in the current age, and what issues may come with that, I thought it'd be a good idea to talk to my 67-year-old dad about the topic and see what he has to say about it. With that, would you like to talk about, like, at first, kind of politics and the news and political division in this country? Let's get the bad stuff out of the way. What do you think about, like, our country becoming more politically divided, where there's big polarity between the right and the left, and this gap in the middle where, like in my research paper, I cite this one quotation from a PBS correspondent who interviews this guy in the southern US, and he says, based on who you voted for, I can immediately decide to discredit you right away without knowing anything else about you. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think some perspective might be needed. So, like, one of the very interesting component of this political process for me is if you go back to the time of Abraham Lincoln and you look at the politics of today in the last, it's been quite a while now, but Republicans like to claim that they are the party of Lincoln. And it is true that back in Abe Lincoln's time, he was a Republican president. And the Democrats were, well, they were portrayed kind of as a bunch of nincompoops and not very well educated. And in a lot of cases,
they were the People's Party, sure.
But, in a lot of cases, that's still the same. I mean,
conservative values are still conservative values.
But the Republican Party became the Democratic Party in this country. And I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but that's kind of a critical point to understand in the history of this country. You have to go back to 1860s to kind of see where this, it didn't just start there. There's been angst and political rivalry since this country got started.
The Republican Party abolishing slavery is not necessarily upholding a conservative value at the time. That has fundamentally changed since then.
That is true. So that party of Abe Lincoln that he was a part of was really more of a progressive party relative to social change and social justice, particularly around the Civil War. Now, the Democrats, they reviled Lincoln, and they didn't support the amendment to abolish slavery. And, there's a really good lesson just by watching the movie. I learned a lot.
Yeah,
I learned a lot just by watching that movie. And it was kind of, okay, that's where that came from.
Yeah, it really does portray it as an uphill battle at the time.
And it was so, but he had, what he had was vision. And so many people, even today, they don't have vision. They don't have vision for the future. And that's a gift that's sorely lacking, not only in the political arena, but it's also lacking in the journalistic arena as well. So
I agree. Yeah, I would say, if I could add on to that, like possibly the best way I consider for having a perspective for the future may be to look at the past and things like what you brought up, that the fundamentals of our politics within this country alone in the last 150 years don't even have a historic precedent for this team mentality and this insider-outsider game of which party you align with being who you are as a person. The conservative nature of the Republican Party now is not represented if you go far enough back in the past. It doesn't make a lot of rational sense. So maybe we could take from that a lesson before we proceed into the future. But to continue on to the next point, I wanted to get your view on artificial intelligence and social media, and how you can have a computer generate a fake video of a politician saying things they never said in a room they were never in, and it can look otherwise completely real to enough people to get some swing.
Well, it could look, bottom line is, it looks real. Everything I've seen that's been an AI generated item looks completely real to me. And that's what's got everybody on edge. I mean, there's potential for great harm. Then while there may be some potential for great benefits, then you always come down to one thing. Well, how are we going to regulate this? And then that comes back to the political arena. And, you know, both parties don't have very favorable ratings. So who knows what direction this is going to go. And then the flip side of this is, well, AI could be used against us by countries that are, we'll call them, not our friends. So we don't really know which direction this is going to go. Could go very poorly. And if the decision making of the United States Congress is any indication, the only way that that might go in another direction is if people really start having contact with their representatives and letting their opinions be known. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the best way to tackle a lot of what we've talked about. Is really people need to make their opinions known.
But even if
we are seeing it with people's trust transitioning to news they get from social media rather than what they get on the TV. So people are showing it in where they spend their time, but they really do need to speak out about their concerns for our future.
Now everybody is on a soundbite, and the public is, and rightfully so, is in an anger mode. And because the tax-paying citizenry, quite frankly, don't feel like any of their views or values are really being implemented into policy for the country. And so this is why you've now got a second term with President-elect Trump.
Yeah.
And it's like, now if that doesn't scare you, frankly, that scares me more than AI over the next 4 years. But that's just me.
Yeah.
And I'm not really a person that's easily made afraid.
Yeah, I will dip into politics a little bit here and say that there is a precedent already in the last 12 years that the last time policy was enacted to kind of curtail new technologies and the new distribution of information through the internet was during the Obama administration working with the FCC. And more recently, we've only seen it during Biden's administration with pushes to do things like ban TikTok and counsel companies like Facebook that may be getting foreign influence distributed to our cell phones and the citizens of this country. So seems like things are starting to happen, but at least politically they are one-sided at the moment, and I hope that changes because this should not be a political issue as I see it.
Well, one of the things, I'm just going to bring this up, because I worked in government for my career, one of the things, and I worked for a large entity within the state of California that was self-funding, but the one thing you realize after you've worked in government for your career is that it's a completely different animal than the private sector. And so it takes a completely different skill set to govern not only the state, but let's go to the national level. It takes an extreme skill set of men and women to govern this country. It's a large country. But by the same token, people think everything is so simple and can be easily remedied. But I'm just going to tell you that just relative to TikTok, you can use any issue, and I'm going to say this: there's always back issues that you never hear about from the leaders that may be incredibly important to our country to be addressed in a way that's never revealed to the citizenry. And that's just the reality of it. And that's the same way with the governmental agency I work for. There were times that decisions got made that, you know, on its face value, the employee base wasn't in agreement with. But usually, in every instance where I was involved with this, and I had some exposure to the executive team, not a lot, but some, and it's something you learn as you're involved in this and get to certain levels of authority. It's like you're not told everything. You don't have all the information. This isn't a perfect world of information flowing like we think it is, because it's not. And so when decisions get made, in all likelihood, they're being made because we don't have all the information. And that's where the trust is. You have to have some trust amongst the elected officials that they are going to do what's right for the American people. And unfortunately, that trust has been fractured.
Yeah.
So, not just by the political, but by the journalistic community as well. They bear a lot of responsibility in that fracture growing.
Right. But yeah, I would agree that I think what you're getting at is like this isn't going to be resolved by any one decision somebody makes, but it's more a matter of steering the boat in the right course. And yeah, I think back to what you said earlier, the best way to go about this is for people to be vocal in contact with the representatives, and we need to make it clear that as a country we're going to hold on to our values for information in the information age, that we need information that's vetted and credentialed, and we need to maintain trust in our institutions, otherwise this all falls apart. So stay vocal, stay active, stay voting, but make sure your institutions are regulated by the local communities around them so we can continue to have a framework for trust in real information, as it's seemingly just going to get harder and harder to tell what is real and what is not.
And with that, from the movie A Christmas Carol, at the very end, Tiny Tim said, "And to all God bless. Amen."
Amen. That's all.